New WandaVision poster here in my room, because I had to. And it's so beautiful. Alright, the third episode of WandaVision has premiered, so now I talk about it with spoilers. I'm gonna give you a verbal spoiler warning this time, because I forgot to last week. Oops. So alright, let's talk about this groovy new episode of WandaVision. Yep, that's right, we are now in the 70s with that hip theme song, which was totally the Partridge Family. Hello world, there's a song that we're singing. Dum dum ba 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 WandaVision. Again, when that came on, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my god. Just again, the amount of effort they put into all the little details here. WandaVision now in Technicolor. I love that. So yeah, this episode takes place in a 70s sitcom setting like the Brady Bunch or the Partridge Family, which means we're in color now, but we're still in 4:3 aspect ratio. And I imagine we will be next week too. And more or less, it centers around Wanda's sudden pregnancy, because we saw at the end of episode 2 that she was suddenly pregnant. So now this pregnancy is going by really fast, which, you know, that's how this show has been going so far. We're in one new decade every episode, so time's going by really fast. In this episode, Wanda goes from being 4 months pregnant to 6 months pregnant to giving birth, which I'll get to later, because holy shit. But I am wondering though, why is time going by so fast in this show anyway? Like, why are we going from decade to decade in this show? I wonder what that's all about. I'll see myself out. I will say though that Elizabeth Olsen's acting in this episode could have been better. I don't know, like whenever she's dealing with the pregnancy and the breathing exercises and the screaming and the yelling, I was like, I don't know, something about this is not landing. Maybe that was on purpose because the acting in those 70s sitcoms wasn't always the best either. So there is that. I don't know though. But the weird things start happening pretty early on in this episode. Like when Vision goes outside, he sees Herb trimming through their wall. And he's like, hey Herb, your hedge trimmer's getting away from me there. And Herb's just like, oh yeah, it is. But then he keeps going and he keeps his eyes fixated on Vision and he's smiling. He's like, my friend and I were sitting there like, yeah, that's weird. And it's funny. But the first big holy shit thing that happened, at least with me in this episode, is when Wanda and Vision are talking about their kid's name. They're discussing whether their kid will be named Billy or Tommy, to which I was like, all right, it's Wiccan and Speed! I mean, before the birth even happened, I knew there were going to be two babies, because we saw in the trailer. So there are gonna be two babies, and they're talking about naming them Billy or Tommy. I'm like, that's Wiccan and Speed from the comics. Billy Kaplan is Wiccan, and Tommy Shepard is Speed. So I imagine in later episodes, these kids are gonna be growing up, which means we're gonna be getting Wiccan and Speed at some point in this show, I imagine. They're gonna be played by younger actors. They could be actors we know. They could be actors we don't. I don't know. But I am totally looking forward to seeing them, because they could be part of this whole Young Avengers thing that the MCU seems to be setting up with Kate Bishop and Cassie Lang and Kamala Khan, and maybe Wiccan and Speed could be part of this new young team. Maybe. I don't know. That's just a theory. But anyway, the weird things seem to just keep going on in this episode, because Vision actually gets pretty suspicious of what's going on here. He brings it up to Wanda. He's like, yeah, that dinner with the hearts, that was kind of weird. And then with Herb in the front yard, I think something's wrong here, Wanda. But then the episode rewinds again, which is funny because it happened really suddenly. Like, I thought my TV was glitching out. Like, it took me a second to realize, oh, Wanda rewound it again. So, like, whenever someone gets suspicious of what's going on, Wanda doesn't like that, so she rewinds time a little bit, which I didn't know that was one of her abilities. I guess she can rewind time briefly. That's news to me. Did you guys get the reference from the commercial break in this episode? I mean, aside from the whole Hydra thing, the fact that, like, the accidents are going on in the house and then the mom is, like, in the bathtub. That was a commercial from back in the 70s for Calgon. You know, Calgon, take me away. If you don't know what that is, that's alright. I'm just weird that way. So Wanda's pregnancy is going by ever faster. Vision goes off to get the doctor, and meanwhile we got Monica Rambeau coming in for a visit, and Monica Rambeau, or Geraldine, has a pretty big part in this episode. She's hanging around the house, she's completely oblivious to Wanda's pregnancy, which realistically she wouldn't be, because Wanda is not hiding it really that well. But for sitcom's sake, Geraldine doesn't realize it. So she sits on the couch, she's talking with Wanda, she's spitting out this whole story about her big promotion at work. But I gotta think, what's the real reason for Monica Rambeau's visit here? Like, what is she really trying to achieve? Maybe it's another rescue attempt for Wanda from S.W.O.R.D., which now you officially know that Monica Rambeau is an agent of S.W.O.R.D. because you see her necklace. So I got the feeling that Monica Rambeau is really trying to save Wanda here from this reality. The reason why, however, is still yet to be determined. Who exactly is doing this to Wanda? Because now more than ever, I get the feeling that Wanda is not the person behind this reality. I think someone is doing this to her. It could be Mephisto, it could be anything else. But regardless, Wanda likes this reality. She doesn't care if it's bad for her or not. She likes it and she wants to keep it at all costs. So whenever someone starts acting suspicious, she's like, nope, you're out, as we see later in this episode. So Wanda's trying to distract Geraldine from the CGI stork. I was like, what's that all about? I'll be honest, that CGI could have been better, but it was funny though. And of course it makes sense that Wanda's magic goes extra crazy during her pregnancy. You know, cause hormones, it makes sense. But then Wanda ends up giving birth right then and there. Geraldine helps her out with the first one, little Tommy, and then Vision comes back for the second one, little Billy. I've heard a lot of people saying that this show is partially based off the comic book arc House of M, which is a big one about Scarlet Witch. Again, I don't read comics, so this is purely from research what I'm about to say. In House of M, Scarlet Witch pretty much has a big, huge mental breakdown, and she resets realities over and over again. It's kind of a big deal in the comics. So yeah, the MCU's Scarlet Witch story is obviously going to take a little bit of inspiration from House of M. In House of M, she gives birth to these twins, Tommy and Billy, and so that's what she does here. So now we have these baby twins, and here's where things start getting really interesting. First off, Vision is in the front yard. He's talking with Agnes and Herb, which actually I was surprised to see that Agnes did not have that big a part in this episode. But Agnes and Herb are acting really suspicious. In fact, Herb almost gives away what's going on here. They're talking about Geraldine. She's like, yeah, Geraldine's from out of town. She doesn't have a home or a family. And Herb's like, yeah, Geraldine's here because we're all... And Agnes stops him. She's like, no, don't spill it. And I was like, what? What? You're all what? I want to know. This show is really going for the slow burn when it comes to the mystery. That's good though. Take your time. We got 6 more episodes to go. But back in the house, Wanda and Geraldine are hanging out. They're looking at the kids. And I love what happens here. Wanda actually mentions her deceased brother, Pietro, as in, you know, Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver, who we knew in Avengers Age of Ultron. And Wanda starts singing this Sokovian lullaby to her kids, which, oh my god, that was so sweet. I loved that touch. Because this is a thing that rarely happens in the MCU, I've noticed. They never really call back to things that are no longer in play. I was like, hello, Pietro was your brother. You're never gonna mention him again? But no, now she does mention him, and we get to know a little bit more about her Sokovian upbringing. But then Geraldine gets this look on her face, and she kind of snaps out of it. Or I don't know if that's the right phrase. But she mentions, she's like, he was killed by Ultron, wasn't he? Which, yeah, he was. And Monica Rambeau would know that because she's not part of this reality. She's a visitor from S.W.O.R.D. To which now Wanda's like, what the fuck did you just say? Oh shit, that necklace. I've seen that symbol before. Alright, you know what? You're done. You're out of here. She kicks Monica Rambeau out of this reality, which I love. The aspect ratio once again goes from 4:3 to widescreen. At the very end of the episode, we see what we saw in the trailer. Monica Rambeau lands on the ground, and then all these military-looking people start rushing towards her, which, yeah, alright, this is the S.W.O.R.D. perimeter. S.W.O.R.D. has set up camp outside of Westview, because we see this barrier that's all like TV static and shit, and that's where the episode ends, with the song Daydream Believer. So now we're getting more of a sense of what S.W.O.R.D.'s role in this show is gonna be. S.W.O.R.D. is indeed keeping tabs on Westview, and specifically Wanda and Vision. So that's what I think is happening. S.W.O.R.D. is attempting to rescue Wanda from this reality which has enveloped this entire town, and the question remains, who is behind this reality? It can't be Wanda at this point. I really don't think it is. I think there's a third party in play. Again, it could be Mephisto, it could be the Grim Reaper, because there was that Easter egg in the second episode. It could be one of 100 possibilities, because again, this is the Marvel Universe. Anything is fair game. If I'm making any predictions for the next episode, I feel like we are going to see more of S.W.O.R.D. and Monica Rambeau. Maybe we'll see Jimmy Woo and Darcy Lewis. That is, if they want to give us any answers here. I don't know if they do or not. It's still pretty early in the show. Also, I don't know if we're going to be in the 80s quite yet, because there were some shots in the trailer that I didn't see in this episode. Like Agnes riding her bike, for example. Maybe the next episode will be a transition episode. It'll be like first half 70s and then second half 80s. I don't know. But this was a really cool episode. It's probably my favorite so far, but I imagine it'll just get better from here. So now I want to know what you all think. The 3rd episode of WandaVision, titled Now in Color. Have you watched it yet? What do you think about it? What are your thoughts on it? Whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe.